Hey, we're glad that you're with us to join in this aspect of disaster relief. This is going to address some of the specific needs of flood recovery. And we're just going to jump right in with some basic procedures that we follow as volunteers and even residents or friends and family of folks that have been impacted by flood events. Some of the things that we can do to do it in a correct way, a safe way, and most effective manner possible. As we begin flood recovery, the first thing that we want to do is make certain that we've shared with the homeowner what's going to take place. We want to make certain, of course, that we have permission to be on a property if we're there. Of course, if it's family or a neighbor or friend, that's probably not a major obstacle or challenge. If we're another group, such as college groups or some of our other disaster relief network, then we want to make sure that we have permission, we're at the right address, we have the owner's permission to be there. But we want to take a few minutes to share with them what's going to be taking place as a result of the flood that they've experienced, help them understand the impact of it, that virtually every item that's been exposed to floodwaters is going to be discarded. And we need to be patient at that point. Help them to understand that while there might be a lot of sentimental connections with pieces of furniture that perhaps were inherited or have a real significant connection with that individual, that it's not likely that it can be salvaged. And for us that go to help each other, to help others, we need to understand that oftentimes persons that have gone through these experiences actually experience grief because they've lost this. They have lost things that they've accumulated. They've lost things with great sentimental value to them. So we need to be patient there. Sometimes we even work through this procedure and we don't do as much in a single day as we could have done because the homeowner, the resident, because they're grieving the loss, they just need a little more time to work through it. And that's okay. We always recognize the fact that this is their property. And the things that we may see as now worthless because of the tragedy of the experience, we need to understand that there's great value there. And there's even this grieving that's taking place. And while to us it's just maybe soiled, muddy stuff, for another person it's something very valuable. So we're going to work with that and work through that patiently. But to get underway, we want to look at a property. We'll go in a residence and be very careful, understanding that when the floor is wet and still muddy, that it can be slippery. We want to check and make sure that the structure is good and sound. Many instances, the local authorities have already come in and inspected property and sometimes tag it as habitable or limited habitation there. Other times it's already been condemned, and of course in that case, unless we're trying to assist with the salvage of some items, we're not going to be doing anything if it's condemned. But we're going to make that initial inspection of the residence. We're going to check and verify multiple times that all of the utilities have been disconnected and it's safe to work there. And the first major thing that we're going to do is just remove all of the contents. Now, if the water's gotten on virtually anything that has fabric, foam in it, upholstery, then it's really not salvageable at all. In a few instances, we can salvage solid wood furniture if it wasn't submerged or it didn't float in water for days or even a week or more. If there were just a few inches of water that got up on the leg of some piece of wood furniture, might be able to salvage that. That's a decision that we can make with the owner. Help them to understand that, hey, if it's salvageable long term, they might be able to refinish it, bring it back, and maintain possession of it. But the contents, if they've been submerged in virtually every case, anything fabric, towels, sheets, clothing, generally speaking, you can't salvage those. It would cost more to try to wash them and clean them. If you were ever able to get the stains out of them, it probably cost more than it would just to replace them. So we're going to work on removing all of the contents that are there. We get into appliances, and as is the case now, in virtually every event, we are asked to separate appliances, that is washer, dryer, refrigerator, any kind of appliance in a metal cabinet. We're going to separate that when we move it remove it from the house. We're going to put it in a separate place out on the street side, the curb side, or out on the road. We're going to keep it separate from the other construction debris. But we're going to take all of that out, get it out there. We can use dollies and hand trucks to make it easier for us. Even the furniture that we take out, if it's been soaked with water, it gets much, much heavier. So we want to do those things to protect our backs and make it as easy as we possibly can. After the contents are out, we'll look at the flooring. Of course, if there's carpeting and padding under the carpeting, all of that's going to come out. We usually cut that into workable sizes. Again, weight is a huge issue. We'll just cut it into strips, haul it out. Very dirty work, very muddy. No way to do that without really just putting a bear hug on it and hauling it out and getting it to a wheelbarrow and then taking it onto the curbside, putting it in the right place. If it's vinyl or linoleum, sometimes that can be salvaged. Much of the time, though, it starts to separate and come loose from the floor. If that's the case, then we'll be taking that out. Hardwood flooring, any of the manufactured flooring that we have today that's so typical and popular in a lot of residences, most of the time that's going to come out. Particularly the manufactured flooring will definitely come out. It doesn't hold up to exposure to water. Hardwood flooring, in a few instances, can be salvaged. We may not get into the removal of that unless it has really bucked or warped and bowed to the point where we can hardly walk across the floor. We get into a lot more time and energy and labor effort to try to take that up. But we've got the floor clear. The floors, of course, that we can usually salvage will be those that are tile, particularly if it's in a basement area that has tile that's glued to the concrete, then much of the time that can be salvaged. After the contents, the flooring, we're going to make a determination concerning the amount of wallboard that needs to be removed. Generally speaking, we take out about 12 inches above wherever the flood came to, but we try to do that at 2-foot increments. So if only 3 or 4 inches of water got into a room, then it would be real easy just to take out about 2 feet of that sheetrock or the wallboard of that room or those rooms or that house. About 2 feet. If it's maybe 18 inches of water, then I'd say let's go to 4 feet. If we get 5 or 6 feet of water in a structure, it's probably just as easy to take the sheetrock out all the way to the ceiling, right where that wall and the ceiling forms a corner, just cut the entire wall out. We do it in the 2-foot increments though, so that when we go back and do the reconstruction, sheetrock, various lengths of it, but all comes in 4-foot widths. And it's much more economical if we can take out 2 feet, 4 feet, or even 6 feet on occasion. It'll be a lot easier and more economical going back at reconstruction sometime later. If there's insulation there, of course we want to remove that. We want to get everything out of that wall cavity that was exposed to the water. It will be saturated. We may even, for instance, if we're only taking 4 feet of the sheetrock out, we might reach a little bit higher to pull more of the insulation down. If it's batting fiberglass insulation, we'd have to cut it to pull out the wet part. But we want to remove anything that's been exposed to the water. The next step in this process is to vacuum up and clean and sweep up as much of the debris that we can. When we remove sheetrock, we get an awful lot of dirt, and it just deteriorates and it just turns into almost a putty. We want to remove all of that, and then after we've done that, cleaned it, vacuumed it very well, we'll pressure wash it or power wash it, and that's just to remove all of that loose debris out of the structure. Pressure wash it, power wash it as clean as we can, remove the water with a shop vac or squeegee or brooms. And then our final step in this process is to apply a good product to keep the mold from growing there. We use a product called Shockwave that's manufactured by a company called Fiber Lock. We apply it with a pump-up hand sprayer, or actually a 4 or 5 gallon backpack sprayer. Is a very effective way just for one house at a time. We have other 15-gallon sprayers. We apply that mold preventative material to the structure, saturating all of the surfaces, the wood in particular, but all of the surfaces, and then we're through. That structure just needs to dry out really good. In some environments, if we can have dehumidifiers, fans, or a heat source, it will dry a little quicker. Maybe in a few weeks' time we can get it dry enough to rebuild. But in many instances, as in the case of the north, because of the cold and the climate, if there's not heat, a source to heat that structure, then it can take weeks or even months before it'll be dry enough to rebuild. So that's basically the procedure from the time we walk in the door till we get to that point where we finish the work. Next, we want to talk about some of the personal protective equipment that we need to wear and to use as we do flood recovery. Our primary concern is the safety of those who are working, whether it's a resident or a volunteer, someone that's helping a friend. We really want you to be safe and understand some of the risks that we have. Standard personal protective equipment would include, in some instances, the use of a hard hat, particularly if we're working in a basement area or a cellar that would have ductwork or plumbing or electrical fixtures that hang a little bit lower than they might otherwise be on a first floor or second floor in a structure. A hard hat is a good extra. At least a cap just to keep debris out of your hair is helpful. And then we want to protect our eyes. We want to use safety glasses at all times. When we're particularly demolishing the wall and removing the sheetrock, we want to have safety glasses on. If we're doing the power washing, we need more than that. We need the goggles, because power washers it's going to blow the debris everywhere. So we want to protect our head, we want to protect our eyes. If we're around equipment that's noisy, ear protection as well. And then the main parts, the three primary parts of our body that we really want to protect are our lungs. So we use respirators, not to be confused with a dust mask that you might use raking leaves or doing yard work, but a respirator can still be a disposable item. Most of what we use is a disposable. We're looking for a respirator, though, that has a rating that is classified as an N95, an N95 or greater classification. That will give us the degree of protection from the mold and the other things that we're often exposed to, so that we do protect our lungs. Flood recovery work, because of what we're exposed to, is not the kind of work that someone who has a pre-existing respiratory issue, some problems there, would probably want to stay completely out of the interior of a residence that's being mudded out in this process. But we want to protect our lungs and do that properly. We want to wear them properly. We want to read the label on those pieces of equipment. Your respirator is a piece of your equipment. We like to use the disposable, because oftentimes we can use them through the morning, and then when we take a break for lunch, we can just throw those away and get a fresh new one. We also like the respirators that have a small exhaust port right here over your mouth and your nose, and it makes it much easier to exhale, keeps the heat from building up around your face and your eyes, your nose. Much more convenient to use. Most of these are available through the big box hardware stores such as Lowe's or Home Depot, your Ace Hardware. Most any kind of hardware store, in particular after a flood event, will be carrying these products. So you can get them in boxes of 10 or single pieces. They come that are actually folded up, but you're looking for that rating that says N95 on that respirator. Read the label again, follow the instructions, be careful when you lift the respirator off. Just don't lift it up and put it up here on your hair, because whatever you've been exposed to, dust and other things, will go right into the inside of that respirator. You bring it back down, and then you inhale, and you're going to take it right into your lungs. So we want to protect your lungs. Next, we want to protect our hands, and we do that with the proper kind of gloves. If we're early on in the process and there's a lot of water that's still there and everything that we're handling is wet, then we need some really good rubber gloves to protect our hands. We like lined rubber gloves that we can put on, but we all know that if we catch a staple or a nail or any sharp, even a splinter on wood, we can puncture that, we can tear those rubber gloves. So we'll oftentimes take a rubber glove and over that put a heavy leather work glove. So it's a rubber glove inside the leather work glove that protects us, protects our skin from the exposure of whatever's in that water, whatever contaminants that were there. And then beyond our hands, our lungs, our hands, we really want to work hard to protect and keep our feet dry. Rubber boots are mandatory. If we're in again, a basement area or even a house without a basement in the first floor and everything is still wet, the carpet is still saturated, we've got to have knee-high rubber boots. The kind that you can buy off the shelf at about any department store that are usually $25 or less. We just want to make sure that we've got on the right footwear. Now, if it's not wet and we're there after an event has occurred and things have really started to dry out, or maybe someone else has removed a lot of the wet stuff, the floor covering, and we're just going back to tear out the sheetrock, maybe remove some damp insulation, then a good pair of leather work boots would be sufficient. Or if you like to have the kind of rubber boots that actually fit over other shoes, you could wear something much more comfortable. I confess that rubber boots are not the most comfortable fit to be in 6, 8, or even 10 hours a day. So you can make that decision, but if it's wet, you need the protection that the rubber boots will give you. If it's dry, you can wear the leather boots. So we're talking about protecting our feet, our hands, our lungs, our eyes, ear protection if necessary, and the same for a hard hat, so that we will be able to be safe in what we're doing. Understand our primary concern for you is your well-being and your health as we work through this process. We want to consider some of the general safety rules to practice as we work. Whenever we're working, we don't want to do it by ourselves. Work with a partner, work in pairs, and as you work, be conscious of where others are. If you're working there, you've got a partner, but there are 6 or 8 or 10 other people around, be conscious of where everybody is, especially if we're in a basement or then over the top or first floor. Oftentimes in the first floor, the easiest way to remove the debris is out a window. Well, we want to make sure if we're throwing some of the sheetrock and other stuff that we're removing out the window, or if we're taking up flooring, we want to make sure that we know where each other is, that we don't throw anything on someone by accident. But it is very easy to do that. Use a wheelbarrow outside a window and load it up. And when I talk about the use of the respirators when we're working in a basement in particular, or inside tearing the sheetrock, if I'm a part of a team and I'm one that's using the wheelbarrow outside and I'm just taking the debris from wherever it comes out a window or a door and taking it to the curbside, then I may or may not want to use the respirator. I'm out in the fresh air, and if there's a breeze moving, there's not the issue that there is in confined spaces. In those confined spaces, we oftentimes find it beneficial to use a ventilation fan, in particular in the basement areas, the cellars. If there's no daylight door to the outside, very little way to get natural ventilation, then an exhaust fan will do a lot to help us move that air. So move the air, get the stale air out, get fresh air in. As we do this kind of work, we're going to always consider that the material that we're working in, what remaining water is there, the mud, the debris, that is contaminated. At least it's going to be contaminated with what's come from the sewer system, the septic system. We hardly ever have a flood event that does not include the backup of sewer and septic systems into a home. What comes in there saturates everything. It will fill the carpet, it will if the water's deep, it will go all over the furniture, mattresses, everything. So we're going to consider that everything is contaminated with sewage, sewer. Around most all of our homes, in every residence, you'll find the basic household cleansers that are there that we need to be careful with. Out in the garage or utility room. You might find paint thinner. There might be a can of gasoline or oil for yard equipment. All of those kinds of things make it important to us to understand that that's why we need to have the boots on, the rubber boots, the rubber gloves, and appropriate protection through this process. But we want to make sure that we have confirmed and reconfirmed again that all the utilities are off in that structure. Don't assume anything. One of the easiest to miss is the water. We've made certain the entire block has the electricity off, and certainly there's no cable, there's no phone, but sometimes it's easy to miss the water. And if by mistake we don't realize that and we have taken a kitchen cabinet out, we will find out very quickly if the water is still on. So we want to check those things. Determine where the water meter is. That's another point as we remove debris and we put it out on the roadside, the street curb. We want to make sure that we're not putting a mound of construction debris on top of the water meter. So look for those kinds of things as you begin the process. We also want to practice good first aid. A little scratch or an abrasion at home that would not cause any kind of risk or problem in this kind of setting can really cause some problems. So if we have a scratch or an abrasion, we want to take care of that. Love to see when we have a group working together, someone that's designated as the first aid coordinator, just a first aid person. That person can have the responsibility of telling us when we need to take a break. We need to have those breaks often and rehydrate. They're the ones that can help us if we have some kind of minor injury, take care of it, wash it, clean it really good, and take care of it in that manner. When we come to lunchtime, we want to have a good practice of cleaning real good. We'd rather not depend on these little hand sanitizers to clean our hands sufficiently before we stop for lunch, but rather have a gallon of good clean water, maybe a tablespoon of bleach added to it. Wash our hands really good with the soap and the water. Then if we want to use a hand sanitizer on top of that, that's okay. But do that every time you take a break. If you're going to take a water break, of course, remove your work gloves, clean your hands really good, and then get your break. Don't reach into a cooler. If we've got an ice chest with a lot of bottles of water in it, we've had issues in the past where people have actually gotten sick because someone who had dirty hands reached into a cooler with all of the bottles of water, and what they had on their hands transferred into the water, and we had some sickness caused because of that. So extra word of precaution as we move to do that and work through that daily process. I want to talk a moment also about what do you do with the clothes that you've worked in all day. Another piece of personal protective equipment that is optional, but we have found ourselves using it many instances now, is to use these disposable coveralls. They're a Tyvek type material. We can use them. They simply protect our work clothes from much of the mud, the muck, the debris that we're exposed to. At the end of the day, if they're not too soiled, we might even get 2 days of use out of them. But if we've been right in the middle of the really cruddy stuff, then we just take those off, toss them into the trash, dispose of them. They do a good job protecting our work clothes. But at the end of the day, what do? Well, we want to understand that those clothes have got on them whatever we've been in that day. They've been exposed to it. So we need to consider what mode of transportation we're using, if we're a personal vehicle or a van or however we're getting back to our place where we're going to rest and sleep for the night. We need to protect that vehicle, the upholstery, from what we've had on us. So we want to do all that we can at the site to make ourselves as clean as we possibly can, to protect the vehicle and those around us as well. Well, what about when we get back home, or if we're part of a group and we're sleeping in a church or a school or some other place? Here's what we suggest, and it's really our practice. Never wear your work boots back into the place where you're residing, that is sleeping, eating, and those kinds of things. Have a designated place at an exterior door. Put down a piece of plastic on the floor, particularly if it's carpet, to protect it, and remove your work boots there. And if you can start the day by preparing a clean set of clothes, everything that you need to shower in, put it into a bag It'd be great if you had it near that exterior door so that at the end of the day when you return, you take your work boots off, you pick up your little bag of clean clothes, just put your initials or your name on it, and then you make your way to the designated shower place. We often use shower trailers. There might be showers in the structure in the building that we're staying in, but we'll be able then to take those clean clothes with us, get the shower, use the same bag, put our dirty clothes into it, and then it keeps it separate. Don't take your dirty clothes back and mingle them with your clean clothes. The best thing that I recommend on doing flood recovery, if we're doing this in some of the really dirty, nasty areas, is that you just try to take your oldest clothes from home, or even go by a thrift store before you leave home and buy some clothes that just sort of fit. They don't have to be perfect, and they don't have to be labeled stuff or anything, but use them to clean the houses and do this kind of flood recovery work, and then at days in, throw them away. And then you don't have to worry about whether you pack them and how you pack them and how you're going to transport them home, because again, you've got to consider that clothing to be exposed to what you've been in during the day. Again, our goal is to keep you safe and to keep you healthy as you try to help others in Jesus' name. And may I remind you again that this is a very brief video that just hits the highlights of material that we also have online of flood recovery guidelines that are very general in nature. Every flood is very different and very specific. It has a uniqueness about it, but there are always those general similarities. And this video, along with the accompanying printed material that's available online, gives you the general principles that we can follow to make us safe. Understand that our goal is twofold. Number one, that you are safe in what you're doing. When you're helping people, that you're helping them to understand the risks that are inherent because of and as a result of a flood event. But we also want you to be safe in your work, that not only you being safe, but those that you're staying with, that you're sleeping with, that you're being housed with, that you're traveling with, that we're all safe as we do this work. So I pray that you'll take these suggestions to heart and practice them and implement them and hold one another accountable as you work together. But then the second thing I want you to know is a part of our work in doing this as a part of Southern Baptist Disaster Relief. It's a part of the whole picture of what we do in Southern Baptist Disaster Relief, whether it's preparing meals to serve hungry people, or helping any aspect of the recovery efforts such as tree removal and chainsaw work, or this flood recovery task, or providing child care. Our purpose for this is to have an opportunity not only to help people physically, but to give them the understanding that we're motivated by our love for Jesus Christ. Nothing is more exciting than have an individual come to us and say, "Why did you come from such a far, far distance from me? And why are you doing this without pay?" And when that person asks us those kinds of questions, then you and I can share it's because of our love for Jesus Christ, what God has done in our lives through Jesus Christ, the hope that He has offered to us. Yes, we want to help you with these things that are material and earthly, your home and the physical needs that are here, but we would like for you to experience the same kind of hope that we have for all of eternity through our personal faith in Jesus Christ. That's why we do what we do. Thank you for being willing to be a part of it.